Hello. So this is a video that is going to discuss kind of my approach to patient care. And this approach is coming from the perspective of looking at the domains of athletic training. So there are 5 domains, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about each one and talk about how, whether it is a strength of mine or a weakness within the care of the patients that I have. And so to begin, one of the first domains, or the first domain in athletic training, it discusses injury prevention and wellness protection. And this is something I believe that I am strong in when it comes to patient care. And this takes it all the way back to the very beginning. So when you think of some of the first interactions that you have with patients, it tends to be pre-participation exams. While I was not directly involved with pre-participation exams at Faith, because they do them in the spring when they host them, I am the one that takes the physicals. I look over them. I make notes about certain athletes that have certain medical conditions, and I keep those in mind. So those are the athletes that are kind of like the red flag ones, or even just more cautionary, like yellow flag athletes that I either keep in mind to kind of keep a close watch over, or maybe I need to take extra steps to educate the patient, parents, and coaches on how to prevent any incidents over the course of their season. And so that is something that I consider a strength of mine. When you also think about other ways of injury prevention, that can include like preventative taping, rehabs, or prevention rehabilitation programs. And I have not been able to necessarily integrate some prevention programs yet, but my hopes are that next year I will be able to start incorporating some of those programs that I have talked to coaches about that I've already started building. So this is a strength of mine, and this is like some of the first interactions that I tend to have with patients. So then moving on, the next domain in athletic training is clinical evaluation and diagnosis. And this is something that is actually an ongoing reflection and improvement process for me. So, this is anything evaluating injuries and making that differential diagnosis to start coming up with a plan of action. And this can occur in any setting, as you already know, on field, off field, for acute and chronic injuries, whatever it is. This is becoming a strength of mine. So this tends to be, towards the beginning of interactions with patients. Often it ends up being one of the first direct interactions with patients for me. And so, this is something that I have really constantly thought of and reflected over. Some of the assignments in this class that have looked at, well, we've obviously focused on the lower extremity, but different selective tissue tests that can be grouped in certain ways. Other assignments have looked at the evaluation of a certain area of the lower extremity as a whole, and how to track that evaluation, not just at that area, but up or down the chain, the kinetic chain. So I've definitely improved a lot in this area. I've reflected a lot in this area, this athletic training domain, and I'm constantly finding ways to more efficiently evaluate the patient and look for the signs and symptoms that are necessary in order to come up with a plan of action or a plan of care. The next domain, or another part of athletic training care, is the immediate and emergency care. Now, this is something that needs a lot of improvement in my setting and for myself. So starting right off the bat, you think of emergency action plans, and there were a couple of very basic ones put in place that somebody had already made for Faith, but nobody was really aware. Like, the coaches weren't really aware of them. They were just very general ones. And so I took those emergency action plans and revised them, made them more specific to certain areas for faith. So like certain areas that hold certain practices and competitions outside or indoors. And then I shared them with coaches. Now this season, the basketball season, wrestling season, I need to go, out of my way and discuss these EAPs with the coaches because I have yet to be able to do that. But I have gone out of my way for some administration and the fall sports, and we've talked about these EAPs. And obviously these are very important. These are like the start and the foundation of emergency care within the setting. The other thing is that Faith had no standards or policies and procedures. And so that has been something that was actually part of my mastermind goals that I have almost completed. I've almost completed a policies and procedures manual. So, and there will also be several more added within the next year, depending on how I can find information about certain things. Like mental health is not something that anybody really focuses on at Faith. And therefore I need to find out more information before I'm able to write that. But it's a work in progress, but that is probably and I should also say my overall confidence with emergency care in general, just due to lack of experience, my overall confidence is a little bit low. So that is probably the domain that is something that I really need to focus on for Faith so that I am able to create the safest environment for the patients and be ready for anything and everything that could happen. The next one is treatment, rehabilitation, and reconditioning. This is also a strong suit of mine. In this domain, I've really learned to incorporate the whole person, in which this class has also taught me a lot about. Even though it focused on the lower extremity, in general, it taught me to focus on the whole person. And one of the assignments, the web of determinants, really drove that home for me, that there is more to the person than just that musculoskeletal injury or that gen med condition. There's family, friends, there's social life, there's academics, their economic standing, just anything and everything, even religion, so many factors that I forget that can be incorporated or need to be incorporated when talking to the patient and coming up with that plan of care and that treatment plan. And so I've really improved in that area as well. So yes. And then the last domain, organization and then professional well-being, I believe. Had it written down somewhere, health and well-being, I think. That is also a work in progress at Faith when it comes to finances and supplies and documentation. Definitely behind in a lot of that. I was the start of a lot of that. But I've improved greatly, especially when it comes to documentation. And looking at and writing up policies and procedures can be incorporated in this domain as well. I've been working nonstop at trying to improve those areas for Faith, and probably will continue working on those areas for the next year and a half, if I am still at Faith at that point. So, but those are the parts of the care that I provide, and all of them work together, and many of them I think several of them overlap with each other, but altogether I think I've improved greatly in every one of those domains, and the assignments such as the web of determinants and the reflections of our evaluations of certain areas of the body, those have really hit home the points of constant improvement and quality improvement within my care. Thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed the video.